Patriarchy, which just refers to, male control of resources, wouldn't really exist if women didn't desire resources in their partners. Because the reason that men tend to control a lot of resources is because women demand resource access on the part of their partners. And if women didn't care, then men wouldn't work so hard to get access to them. There's this really great quote by Aristotle Onassis where he once said, "Without women, all the power and money in the world would be completely meaningless."
So real quick, I know a lot of people, even in the red pill space, some of them would say it, or in the manosphere space, they'll say little things and allude to women is definitely a driving force for a man's ambition and assertiveness and stuff like that. What this feminist is doing, she's going to the extreme. She's saying the reason for the patriarchy and men having these resources and stuff like that. One, she said the patriarchy is primarily for the accumulation of resources and stuff like that, that isn't true. That's just not what the patriarchy is about. It's about a lot more as far as the biology of the man. The man is the leader in the household. He's the strongest person in the household. Men are the ones that fight the wars and stuff like that. So there's a lot more that encompasses the patriarchy than just resources. Now, of course, resources is a important piece of it, but it isn't the end all be all. But let's play more and I'll break it down to you guys.
The fact of the matter is, she's more right than she is wrong. One of the first things we even learned in psychology class was that pretty much, if not everything we do as humans, is to increase our chance and success rate of reproducing and passing on our genes to the next generation. Of course, the human mind is quite layered and complex, so on top of our main purpose for living, which is to ensure the survival of our genes, we've got all this other stuff going on in our lives. But if you were to take all that away or really dive into the reasons people do the things they do, you'll find that at the end of the day, it all comes down to sex. If women didn't care and there was no competition for sexual access, our biology and way of thinking would be very different to what it is today. So who knows how we'd be behaving as a society? It might even be the case that our technology isn't as advanced as it is because there just isn't that motivation or determination in the male psychology to want more.
I think that there's a lot of wisdom in that. Men work so hard to control the resources, not because men together are banding, together and trying to hoard the resources and keep them from women. Instead, it's an epiphenomenon of the fact that men are competing amongst whoever else has access to resources to get resources of their own, right? And because women value this in their choice of partners, oftentimes men will go to greater lengths to get them, right? One of the reasons, not the only reason, but certainly one of the reasons that we see that more men tend to be in, positions of being a CEO, for example, is because oftentimes men are more willing to make the trade-offs that you have to make to get into those positions because men are wired that way, right? And the reason that they're wired that way is because they've inherited these tendencies to want this despite the costs, because it would have paid off in terms of being able to attract better partners, a greater number of partners. The patriarchy, which just...
When people speak, sometimes they'll sprinkle a little truth. It'll be like a little bit of truth in the message, but the entire conclusion of her message is a complete lie. And I'll break it down to you guys momentarily. What she's alluding here to in her conclusion of the patriarchy and why men have this drive and ambition, the logical entailment of all of this is because of females. They want chicks and women desire finances and resources. So a way to get women is to acquire more finances and more resources and stuff like that. Now, from a surface level, you're thinking like, Cooley, well, no, she has to be right.
Like I mentioned before, if you were to just watch humans from afar and how we behave, we might look like we're very complex, but at the end of the day, we're still animals. But because our brains and cultures are so layered, it can be hard to see the reasoning behind why we often do the things we do. Saying all that though, remember, the driving force behind our existence is to reproduce. So pretty much everything we do is to make sure we can achieve that. And for the most part, it's not even something we're conscious of.
You get what I'm saying? No, not exactly. From a surface level, that part, yeah, is it a motivation? Do men do things to get women? For sure they do, but that isn't a real man. A real man is going to be on his purpose, and the byproduct of his success is the women.
Yeah, that's true. But it still doesn't change the fact that subconsciously, or however you want to look at it, your body's main priority is to reproduce. And if it's recognized a way to do that, it's going to do that, at least for the most part. Because as I said, the way humans behave or react to situations isn't always so easy to understand.
So it's much different. And really, if you are trying to do things for the purpose of women, you normally don't get the woman. I repeat, when a man is actually trying to do things for the sole purpose of a woman, he normally doesn't get the woman, because women, they have this sixth sense almost of weaning out the thirsty guys, the beta men, and also weaning out the guys that's not really the alpha, not really the big dog. But anyways, let's break it down from a few lies that she said, and I'll give you some facts here. So men have a natural propensity to compete and a natural proclivity to protect and provide. I repeat, men have a natural propensity, meaning it's ingrained in them, to compete.
And the reason men have that proclivity is because it's something that increased their chances of being able to reproduce. If women didn't exist, well, men wouldn't exist either, because we'd likely be a species that reproduces asexually. So everything about our biological makeup would be different, as our evolutionary history wouldn't be what we know it as today. Now, if women just up and vanished right at this moment, the nature of men isn't going to change, because it took thousands, if not millions of years for us to evolve into what we've become today.
So when she's saying that the patriarchy is there, and the reason why men have this drive to be out there and garner resources and stuff is because of women. No, my dear friend. It's not because of women. Women are just a byproduct of this, is because they seek out the accomplishment. They seek out quality.
Yeah, and because they seek out quality, if a man wants his chance to reproduce, he has to be better than the other men around him so that he can pass on his genes to the next generation.
And also, men are simple creatures. Like, the reason why we don't require a whole lot. Why do you think the saying is, a dog is a man's best friend? The dog is a man's best friend is because we don't require a whole lot out of life too much. Meaning we don't need females to find our true purpose. We don't need females to find something to protect and provide for. Without any females, we can have a dog to protect and provide for. And this reason is because men are the apex predators.
He's right. We are at the top of the food chain. But all the things that make men what they are today would be very different if women didn't exist. This whole thing only really makes sense if women were to stop existing right now. It's not taking into consideration why humans and the majority of other animals have developed the traits and characteristics they have.
We're the smartest out of all the land species on the planet. So we're the apex predators. We're the smartest. So men, yeah, we have this natural propensity to compete with one another, but a natural proclivity to protect and provide.
Which again, most likely wouldn't be a part of our biological makeup if sexual competition didn't exist.
So that natural proclivity of what we have, we'll find a dog that we can protect and provide. We'll find a little, a little animal or something we can protect and provide for. We'll build something that we'll protect. You get what I'm saying? Now let's break down compete. Like, where do we get this natural competition in males? Where does this come from? Well, it comes from our biology, and you'll see it at a very young age. In elementary school, boys play things like tag and hide and seek. That's what they'll do. They play games like tag and hide and seek, where there's a competition. There's a winner and a loser in this. Now, a feminist would say, well, the boys probably play those games because they haven't went through puberty at that young age, so they don't have their testes hasn't dropped. Which is dumb, because you'll even see the boys will play games amongst one another, even when they're in middle school and in high school. And actually, I got a pen right here, a pencil. You know the game, pencil fighting. We'll play games like pencil fighting amongst one another. That's what we'll do. We'll play games like pencil fighting because we naturally have this propensity to compete.
And we have that built into us because the men who are able to beat out the other men were the guys who would have been most likely to successfully reproduce. I mean, this is something that you even see now with the whole top 10% of men thing. It's the guys who are able to surpass other men who garner most of the attention from women. So for the most part, it's going to be their genes that get passed on. Throughout history, most men haven't actually been able to reproduce because that privilege was only achieved by the best of the best. Of course, things are very different now because of how society's evolved and all that, but there are still a lot of guys out there who never get to ensure the survival of their legacy.
So what this feminist is saying, she's a liar, she's wrong, and the reason why she's saying this is because she's viewing things from the female's lens, because she's a woman.
I've reacted to some of this woman's content in the past, and actually, I think it was from this same interview, and from what I remember, she was saying something about nice guys getting all the women, which just isn't true. In any case, I don't really think this is a female lens type of thing, and if you don't agree with me or see where I'm coming from, do a little digging into evolutionary psychology and human behavior yourself. You don't have to just take my word for it. To me, it's pretty logical to think that men wouldn't be the same if women didn't exist, and that the whole human race would be completely different.
She doesn't understand that we just have this natural drive to compete. Now, also games like, what's one of the other games? I don't even know what it's called, but I have a can here. And it's a game that boys are playing. No chicks are around when guys are pencil fighting. No chicks are around. We're in a cafeteria pencil fighting. We're not even worried about chicks. But we're doing these things for competition. So there's a clear winner and a loser at the end of it. Now in the can game, I know a lot of people in high school played this game. When you flick it, boom, then you turn it around and your boy flicks it on the other end or whatever. So you flick it here, your boy flicks it there. Whoever knocks this little cap off wins the game. So we always play games that involves competition, that involves a winner and a loser.
Just from what Cooley's saying right now, you can see that competition and winning is very important to men. But why is that? What is the biological advantage of being the top dog in your tribe? What benefits do you think that kind of man will receive? Do you think he'd be more or less likely to reproduce than the men who are considered to be losers or weak?
So we're ingrained, this is ingrained in boys at a very young age. Now when they, become adults, well, guess what? This competition that you even see at a young age is in the adult age as well, which creates what she's speaking about, this patriarchy of garnering resources. Well, the only way we can garner resources if we're competing with one another.
Exactly. And what increases when you have more resources than other men? Your chance to reproduce.
So this debunks her entire claim. Now let's get to another reason to why she's saying this and why she has this view. Because once again, she's viewing things from a female's lens. When girls are young, they're very social creatures. They don't really care about games with the competition. They'll play games like house and hopscotch.
And the reason why girls or women behave differently and have different interests to men is because their mating strategy isn't the same as a man's. Women aren't judged on their strength, leadership, or ability to garner resources, so it makes sense as to why their behaviors and interests would be very different from our own. What you'll see in women is that they'll be very critical of each other's looks and things of that nature. And why do you think that is? It's because men are all about the physical when it comes to choosing who they want to have kids with. So while it's very different to how men compete for sexual selection, women have their own way of doing things and making themselves the most attractive to a potential mate.
Bro, there's no winner or loser in house. How there's gonna be a winner and loser in house? It just ain't it. So her entire reasoning for the patriarchy and why men are assertive and have these ambitions is because of women. No, it's not because of women. It's because God made us this way.
Well, I'm not a believer in God or anything like that, which is probably why I have the thoughts I do. But I'm not going to get into all that right now. But if you want to argue with someone about it, you're better off getting in touch with someone like Matt Delahunty to see how you do on his show. And trust me, I'll be watching with my coffee and popcorn.
It's in our biology to compete amongst one another. Now, it's not to say that, yeah, the byproduct of a man being assertive, being dominant, and out-competing others, like that byproduct is more chicks, because chicks are attracted to resources. That's the byproduct of it, but that's not the reason. The reason is our biology.
Our biology, which exists the way it does because of sexual competition. But honestly, I don't think there's anything more for me to say about this, but there's a little more to go on this video. So if you want to check it out, I'll leave a link in the description. But on your way out, let me know your thoughts about all this so we can chop it up.